So we're looking at the throat center today. See how each of these centers are connected up to the throat that are going to allow for some kind of communication. In a 9-centered human being, it's all about communion. Each of us, when we awaken, we can offer our unique, differentiated perspective to an other without a not-self agenda. When that happens, we're being an outer authority. We're being or coming from a place of enlightenment. And so rather than your mind getting all caught up in the story that you are telling yourself about good, bad, right, wrong, if you can come back to present moment and listen for pure, clean, clear communication, feel how it resonates in your body. Either these gates or channels in somebody's design are designed to be, in Natalie's case, what is impactful. In my case, what is successful. In Efrat's case, what is satisfying. In Lisa's case, what is surprising. So from the perspective of each of us finding our signature, do not forget that when you're looking at a design, you have to put them back into their context. The biggest context is type and the signature of being aligned. The success, sweet, satisfying, peaceful, surprising, whatever the case may be for that type. That's how you keynote weave. Right there is the basic, most simplest, fundamental place to go. Okay. Now this throat center is so complex in that it's got all these different roads, you could say. Quite literally, they're all black right here. If they were red, they'd be tunnels and we'd be unaware until it pops out. One of the things that you're going to notice is that when you start to do this work is that you as a personality may not know what you're talking about, but you as an unconscious reality, your body, your physicality communicating knows so much more than what the personality thinks it knows. So the moment that you are allowed to get yourself out of the way by just trusting your voice, okay, if you have a defined voice, or if you have an undefined throat, trusting whatever your authoritative process is in order to ask the right question, in order to say that quote unquote right thing. It's about alignment, really it is. It's about correctness. So manifestation happens here in the throat center because of a consistent connectivity to energy that is either directly or indirectly, as in Natalie's case, reaching the throat. That's where we have manifestation. That's where we have the consistency of the verbal capacity. So remember, if you're an undefined throat, you just won't say as many things. You'll be more conversational. Okay, just like us with our basic splits over here, we are much more conversational in integrating with another person. So trusting yourself is the most important thing I can tell you about doing this work. This hub of manifestation, if it's undefined in you, is an area of wisdom potential where you can guide others' manifestation because you have that recognition capacity or response or whatever the case may be. So looking at all of these throat gates, when you're dealing with this most complex of all centers, notice how it's all through the quarter of civilization. So what you're looking at in 1/4 of this wheel, everything about the throat is a civilizing effect on human beings. Yeah, civilizing. Why? Communication helps us get our differences out of the way, because when we have communion, when we have clear communication, we are less likely to feel frustrated, angry, bitter, or disappointed. When you come into your mind space and you see that whatever you're believing or hearing or thinking inside of your head about yourself is making you bitter, angry, frustrated, or disappointed, please immediately question that thought. I'm pausing because I really want that to sink in. What is real in the world of form, in communicative reality, is that when you speak inauthentically, it shows. Show of hands. When somebody is saying something that they don't believe in, can you feel it? Can you see it? Can you recognize it? When they're being inauthentic with their voice, they're promising something, they're trying to say something in order to attract attention or prove something. Can you feel it? Can you see it? Can you hear it? Smell it? Taste it? Touch it? It's apparent, right? There's no place to hide when you open your mouth and you're coming from, see me, value me, appreciate my identity, whatever the case may be. Okay, you can lower your hands. Okay, so what I want you to see is that when we speak, there's nowhere to run. There's nowhere to hide. You can feel it. Well, I keep saying feel. That's my perspective as far as my unconscious process of what I sense, my sensory capacity, but it's really all of the senses. So maintaining our form on this planet is what those throat gates are about. Either a communicative principle, okay, all of the throat gates up to the head, these are all communication only. These are not action gates. Where do we find action gates? From the perspective of direct action gates, primary action gates. Please give me some numbers. Direct action gates, primary action gates. Okay. There's one more. Oh, there we go. So 45, 12 is one missing, 35, and 20, right? Because from the perspective of the gate itself, that is expressing the action, the energy, directly, there are only 1, 2, 3, 4 that are pointing at energy functions, right? Energy centers. So those are the things that are direct manifestation gates. So as an example, now remember when you're looking at this, this is all about thyroid. What is thyroid about? It's like a regulatory principle, you know, our ability to manifest in this form on this planet. Everybody has the capacity to manifest, but nobody has the capacity to initiate that unless they're manifested in design. And of course, even in that case, these emotional manifestors need to wait for clarity. These manifested energies need to have the permission to take control or take charge. And this last one, this one has to wait for the response. So you can see all of these are primarily action, but through a correct interaction. And now when you look at all these 11 gates, every single one of them being connected up to the same biological function, thyroid, parathyroid. It's not like the heart where there's all these different things going on. It's just thyroid. We can call that unity. Unity of a single biological association where we're looking at the thyroid, and what it manifests as is the throat. So the voice, the one way in which language comes out of all of us, each of us having our own articulatory skills. So every single one of these gates, I want you to think articulation, okay? Articulation. They all have an articulatory skillfulness or ability to encourage progress or ability to change the way the entire world sees something. 12s. They all have something unique. They are not all alike. And how do we find their uniqueness? Not just through knowing a gate, but what stream is it in? What is it pointing at from the perspective of what center is actually being given that voice? Because the center itself is speaking when it's connected up, yeah, consistently. That's that person's definition. The royal we, you know? So, from the perspective of how language is coming out of us, when you look at a body graph, look at what's going on up here from the perspective of the voice in relationship to mind. Only 3 of all of those gates really have the ability to translate light into sound or vibrational word formulas from the perspective of just this pure, clean, self-reflected consciousness. Okay, these are metamorphic gates. That's the first thing to come to grips with. They're all only talking about mind. Now, when you're talking about mind, remember you have those 3 that are either going to be logical, in their assumptions, we can say, if it's open up there. They're going to be abstract or they're going to be individual. So if you compare the three, we know that there's 2 parts collective and 1 part individual. So it's not about tribe. Up here, it's just about the world at large for the most part, and then there are the freaks among us that have some activations or channels within. And so timing is everything when it comes to mental communication, everything. If you're feeling uncertain, why not just say pass? If you're feeling pressured and mentally anxious, why not just let that go? Because you don't have to have any kind of certainty out of your mental capacity to articulate. You don't. So stop trying to be that certain, sure, inspirational orator. You don't have to. Let it go. Okay? From the perspective of these 11 throat gates, each one of them have a unique voice. So the thing to understand is your genetic potential shows us where your true voice comes from. So it's very important to understand where your voice comes from, where your words come from, because they don't just come from mind. This is what Ra has said to us, okay? Anyone. So just like you are here studying not only for yourself, but also for others, what you can do from this day moving forward, if you want to study the throat, is listen for the keynotes of those throat gates coming out of your friends' mouths. Your family, your kids, your study buddies, whoever it happens to be, just listen. And then you can see, are they speaking from an authentic voice? Or are they speaking from conditioning? I don't want to say inauthentic, because some conditioning is absolutely authentic. Those of you in your Chiron cycle, you know, or whatever cycle, long-term cycle that really is a part of, let's say, the life work that you're moving through at that time of your life, you know, from the perspective of you don't want to use those to make decisions because they're not unique to you. However, they are part of the wisdom potential that can flow from you when you are operating in alignment, because there are no rules for the nine-centered being. Your voice is what you have to bridge the gap between you and another, just like right now. It's funny, happenstance. I happen to be not on camera, but right now all you're hearing is my voice. My entire auric frequency is being communicated through this voice. And so from the perspective of understanding communication, it's not just about the words that we use. The quality of the voice is the most important thing. Our words that we actually use are secondary, according to Ra. It is the quality of the voice that makes a difference as far as whether or not the information, the energy is flowing from this individual and into another. Now, that's just part of the story. When we connect up with others, certain people will resonate. You know, certain people will vibrate and really grasp that or get it in their cells, deep in their cells. You may not know what to think about it yet, but you know that you cannot help but listen because something is happening inside of you. That's the mutative effect of any of these gates that are individual in nature. Mutative effects. So the gates in your throat are key to who you are. It's something that not only you need to speak, but you also need to hear for yourself. Hear your own voice. And then know what aspects are coming through, bleed through from the nighttime conditioning potentially. Love and light. You've got the 62 at night. You don't have it during the day. Love and light. I only want rainbows and unicorn farts and everything's wonderful. You know, if your mind is telling you, no, but we have to figure out what we think here. See, I'm just making that little false voice to kind of differentiate it from my normal speaking voice. That's the inauthenticity. I'm playing with that, but that is what happens. Your voice sounds different. This is very true when it comes to an undefined throat. Anybody ever remember listening to, what's his name? He just died. Human Design Hawaii. John. Yeah, John. Do you recall how often he would laugh and also say all kinds of weird things in very different tonalities. Unicorn farts, that's the 62, John. That's an official key term. Just kidding. Just kidding. Please don't say that. It's not true. But when you study dream rave, you'll start to learn why I said that. It's an angel realm gate. And if it's a nighttime bleed through conditioning, oh boy, does it get you into trouble during the daytime. Okay. So yes, his voice. So your voice, when it's undefined, it's inconsistent. It's all over the map. You have different ranges of tonality. Think Celine Dion. Celine Dion. Yeah? Isn't she incredible? Her voice. Wow. Okay. So from the perspective of these voices, all of you have these voices. They're either going to be consistent, reliable, trustworthy aspects of your nature, or they're going to be inconsistent and subject to showing up in a conditioned way. Nothing wrong with either of that. All of this is beautiful and perfect. We all have a place within our totality. So these are the keys that we're going to go through one at a time. I'm going to give you a break in about 5 minutes. And when we come back, I'm going to go through all of them as an overview or review if you've already done this. And if you want to go deeper, 4 or 5 different classes, I believe, in the IHDS class that I'll be doing soon. So we're going to start off with looking at the gates that are pointed up at the Ajna center. When you think about these gates, just know that they are incredibly unusual from the sense of they are metamorphic. Metamorphic. What does that mean? Morphic. They change. Meta. They have meta capacity, to be very simple about it. They are more than just receptors of mental opinions, insights, or ideas, of mental concepts. They are the translators. So besides metamorphic, think translators of taking mental concepts and distilling them down into language. So stepping down in frequency. Light is a higher frequency, right? Then we have sound. I don't know the order of such things or all of the different densities, but I do know that light travels faster, right? And then we have sound. So here's the sound. Here's where it happens. So language is actually, according to Ra, not in Ajna. Language emerges out of the throat. So from the perspective of each of these gates, there is going to be a frequency of this or that to the way in which this I think voice shows up. It's either reasonable or unreasonable. The I know, insist, or I don't know, desist. The I believe, instilling hope, or faith is another word you can use there, or despair. So from the perspective of language and turning light into sound, these metamorphic gates in you are true to your aspect of what you came here for. If you have a planet sitting there, that planet, teaching if it's Jupiter, your good fortune and your good luck if it's Jupiter. So that's where we have our ingredients, in our cake that we're baking. What do we need we need in order for the flour or the cake to rise? We need our baking soda and we need our apple cider vinegar. We need our aspects of what we're bringing to the table. Yeah, we're not going to do a lot of chart analysis like comprehensively. I just have a couple of little examples in here. And I'll label the names if you feel like maybe you know them or you can relate or correlate. This is one of the things that you want to do from the perspective of from this day forward. Look, listen, hear for those voices. Everybody has them. Everybody can get conditioned to use them. But for most people, it's not a place of authority to listen to them out loud. From the perspective of mental or projectors and ego, authority manifestors, or the perspective of self-projected projectors, hearing what you hear yourself say, like really following what you hear yourself say, either spontaneously, the ego and the self-projected, or when you come to your certainty with the mental projector. Those are the only people that can really use what they hear themselves say as part of their decision-making process. Everybody else has a different process. For Lisa, she has her own knowing that happens through her lunar cycle. You know, after the lunar cycle, we have that sense of knowing for the reflector. And everybody else, you have a physical place in your body for your authority to happen. So the throat is never a place of authority, period. What you hear yourself say, let's say as an example, your mind says, I know, and I'm going to do it. And then because you don't want to be seen as mentally inconsistent, you think that you have to do what you said you were going to do. It's a real falsity in today's day and age that you believe the mind's story when in reality, it really is just like Rob would say, gas of the brain. Okay, so let's go into being unreasonable or being reasonable, the I think process. In terms of looking at the 60-second gate, this is the logical process, a voice that says, I think, or I don't think. I don't think it's okay. I think it's reasonable. I think it's unreasonable. It's thinking. That is the logical key. So from the perspective of what keynotes you can use, think or not. I don't think. From the perspective of what you add on to at this level, this may be the thing that you have not yet heard is reasonable with one's, what are they going to be expressing? Opinions, right? On the flow of energy, 17 opinions, or unreasonable. I don't think it's unreasonable to, so you can hear that in people's language, what they use. From the perspective of who this is Yoko Ono's chart. And she says, I think energy is the most important thing that we can give to people as performers. Anything else is a little bit pretentious, but energy is not. You can see that she has this in Pluto as part of her caution, patience, and detail, producing excellence out of limitation. Now, the next one we're looking at is the I know voice. So we all know Ra knows. You know? Do you know? So over here, we're dealing with out of the collective into the individual. Ooh, I like that, Natalie. Energy. Yeah, energy, for sure. From the perspective of the individual saying, I know, or not, the whole thing about this is that it's insistent. You can hear when Ra insists that he knows. You can tell that man is certain about his formulas. When you hear him say, I think, you hear the frequency shift. Have you noticed? The I know, the articulatory insistence of certainty is different than the I think voice, yeah? Anybody saying I think is different than I know or I don't know, you know? From the perspective of, you know, it's like a question. These are freaks, as we know. So as a freak, we can desist in order that we don't offend anybody. Desist, as in we don't want to be picked on, we don't want to be ostracated, we're all very different, we're freaks. I say we because I'm part of that group and I've got a 23. So from the perspective of it's a mask that we wear, but with our voice. And none of us compare. We all have different voices. So from the perspective of what you see in the quality to how the voice is being used, it depends on what is actually defined there. In our individual process, here with Ra, he says, I've said, I know so much in my life. I tell you it's weird. I know. It comes out when I don't even know what I'm saying I know to. Because it is just a program. I know. Right there. See how he says, I don't even know what I'm saying I know to. The I here is his mind. His body, this was his design path that he was walking, had this genetic imprinting that gave him that freak channel that could be certain about the formulas that he was sharing.